But Prudence's letters had been neatly wrapped in chintz and tied with a bow that had lasted over a century. The first letter in the packet, dated just after Elizabeth's marriage, had been a feverish kind of nuptial congratulation. "Stephen is a good man, and you deserve him," Prudence had written. "You deserve more, too. Save a part for yourself and another for me." There followed suggestions as to which parts Prudence would prefer. Agnes had shown the letters to her mother, who promptly burned them. A misplaced panic, Agnes thought. Given the ways of the world, she could list a dozen local scholars and gentlemen of parallel inclinations, given that Providence had by all accounts bestowed an approving smile on Prudence and Elizabeth, given that it was all in the past. Of course, the past still shaped them, though. Every dollar spent, or metastasizing an investment, proved that much. It pleased Agnes to be a woman at the fortune's helm once more. She sometimes imagined Prudence and Elizabeth similarly pleased by her ventures, her donations, her caretaking of their legacy. At times it was as if the fortune were a live beast, gentling to her at the memory of the delicate hands that had tended it in its infancy. It rewarded her for her labors, not only materially, but with a priceless species of influence that carried her through closed doors. She had negotiated an education well beyond the standard for her sex, her women's annex degree countersigned by the university's president. Equivalent in all respects, he'd begrudgingly conceded, to the men's. Now her financial support had earned her, equally begrudgingly, what she could not win through a true career in academe, an honorary place on the board of the university itself. However ceremonial the position, she was a trustee. She sat at the table and directed the allocation of her donations. She signed her name on university letterhead. Agnes saw herself as a balancing counterweight to the distinguished professors who traipsed across the neighborhood to duplicate their lectures in the cramped classrooms of the women's college. Her life's work was to widen this path to a two-way street. Naturally, the money had, for the most part, not passed matrilineally, but Agnes had learned enough, even with the missives of history burned to ash, to know women could be dragons. It was a responsibility as well as a power, Prudence and Elizabeth's fortune. Agnes feared that vanishingly distant cousins and their gambling house addictions would never be completely exterminated from her drawing room, where they appeared cyclically with hats in hands. But, by the same token, there would also never be a fruit or fabric, an atlas or academic or work of art she could not eventually summon to her door. The case of the glass modeler was a simple one. The university needed lifelike botanical and invertebrate specimens that could be permanently displayed, so that undergraduates might study species rendered inaccessible by season or geography. Additional models, the faculty hoped, would accompany these and magnify nature's more minute details: mold spores, coral polyps, flowers' ovaries in cross-section, to scale and in 3 dimensions. There was, apparently, one gentleman living who could supply such models. Agnes could supply the gentleman. It began as detective work. She applied to the patrons and boards of museums in New York and in Europe, writing on university letterhead and signing with her initials to escape potential prejudice. There was almost exclusively one name recommended for botanical and zoological models, one name breathlessly repeated, a gyre of whispered expertise centering on Bohemia. Monsieur Novak, Novak of Prague, Mr. Ignaz Novak. But the models were impossibly delicate glass, the curators warned. Several had broken when shipped only a few dozen miles overland from his studio. He would, almost certainly, have to be kept in residence. Agnes applied herself to the task, writing to Novak and introducing herself as the head of an exploratory committee seeking to engage a glass modeler. She did not mention that she was the single donor who would fund the position, nor that she was a woman. Novak resisted at first, in kind but demurring letters.